Lecture 16, Security Policies and Compliance. Theme, Risk Management, Policies and Compliance. Technical University of Moldova. Lecturer, Maxim Masiutin, Associate Professor. Introduction. Welcome to Lecture 16, our final lecture in this series. Today we address security policies and compliance, how organizations formalize security requirements through policies and demonstrate conformance to regulations, standards, and contractual obligations. Policies and compliance might seem bureaucratic, but they serve essential functions. Policies translate security principles into actionable requirements that employees can follow. Compliance ensures organizations meet legal obligations and customer expectations. Together, they create accountability and consistency in security programs. The regulatory landscape has transformed dramatically in recent years. The European Union has enacted multiple cybersecurity regulations: the NIS2 Directive, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, the AI Act, and the Cyber Resilience Act. The United States has introduced new SEC cybersecurity disclosure rules. Industry frameworks like NIST and CIS continue to evolve. Organizations must navigate this increasingly complex environment. Over the next 2 hours, we will explore policy hierarchies, the ISO 27001 Information Security Management System, NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, CIS Controls, Security Governance and Audit, Incident Response Planning, and major EU and international regulations. Part 1. Security Policy Hierarchy. The purpose of security policies. Security policies document management decisions about security. They establish what the organization requires, why it requires it, and who is responsible for meeting those requirements. Policies serve multiple purposes. They communicate expectations to employees. Without written policies, expectations are inconsistent and unenforceable. Policies tell everyone what is required. They demonstrate due diligence to regulators and courts. When incidents occur, organizations must show they had reasonable security measures. Documented policies provide evidence. They enable consistent implementation. Policies ensure all parts of the organization follow the same requirements, avoiding gaps and conflicts. They support accountability. When requirements are documented, individuals can be held accountable for meeting them. Policy document hierarchy. Organizations typically maintain a hierarchy of security documents. Policies are high-level statements of management intent and requirements. They answer what and why, but not how. Policies are approved by senior management or the board. They change infrequently, typically reviewed annually. Example policy statement. All information assets must be classified according to their sensitivity and criticality. Standards define specific, mandatory requirements that implement policies. They answer what specifically but still not detailed how. Standards are more technical than policies but still requirements, not instructions. Example standard. All passwords must be at least 14 characters, include uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters, and be changed every 90 days. Procedures are step-by-step instructions for performing tasks. They answer how exactly. Procedures are operational documents used by staff performing specific functions. Example procedure. To reset an Active Directory password. 1. Open Active Directory users and computers. 2. Locate the user account. 3. Right-click and select Reset Password. 4. Enter a temporary password meeting complexity requirements. 5. Check. User must change password at next logon. Guidelines are recommendations rather than requirements. They provide advice for situations where flexibility is appropriate. Guidelines use language like should rather than must. Baselines define minimum security configurations for specific systems or technologies. They are technical standards applied to system deployment. Essential security policies. Every organization needs certain core policies. Information security policy is the master policy establishing the organization's commitment to security, defining scope and objectives, and establishing the overall framework. Acceptable use policy defines permitted use of organizational systems and data. It covers personal use, prohibited activities, monitoring, and consequences of violations. Access control policy establishes principles for granting, reviewing, and revoking access to systems and data. It addresses least privilege, separation of duties, and access review requirements. Data classification policy defines classification levels and handling requirements for each level. It establishes who can classify data and how classifications are marked. Incident response policy establishes requirements for detecting, responding to, and recovering from security incidents. It defines roles, escalation, and reporting requirements. Business continuity policy requires plans for continuing operations during disruptions. It establishes RTO and RPO requirements and testing frequency. Third-party security policy defines security requirements for vendors, partners, and service providers with access to organizational systems or data. Physical security policy addresses facility security, visitor management, and physical protection of equipment. Policy development and maintenance. Developing effective policies requires stakeholder involvement. Policies affect everyone. Include representatives from business units, HR, legal, and IT in development. Clear language. Write for your audience. Avoid technical jargon and policies that apply to all employees. Realistic requirements. Policies that cannot be followed will not be followed. Ensure requirements are achievable. Alignment. Policies must align with each other and with regulations. Conflicting requirements create compliance gaps. Approval. Policies require formal approval at appropriate levels, typically senior management or board for high-level policies. Communication. Policies are useless if employees do not know them. Train employees on policies. Make policies easily accessible. Review. Policies become outdated. Review annually and update when business or regulatory changes occur. Part 2. ISO and IEC 27001 Information Security Management System. What is an ISMS? An Information Security Management System, or ISMS, is a systematic approach to managing sensitive information. It encompasses people, processes, and technology with the goal of protecting information confidentiality, integrity, and availability. ISO and IEC 27001 is the international standard specifying requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an ISMS. First published in 2005, it was significantly revised in 2013 and again in 2022. The 2022 version reflects current security practices and restructured controls. ISO 27001 certification demonstrates to customers, partners, and regulators that an organization has implemented a comprehensive security management system. Certification requires assessment by accredited certification bodies. ISO 27001 structure. The standard follows the Annex SL structure common to ISO management system standards. This enables integration with other standards like ISO 9001, quality, and ISO 22301, business continuity. Clauses 4 to 10 specify ISMS requirements. Clause 4. Context of the organization requires understanding internal and external issues, interested parties, and determining ISMS scope. Clause 5. Leadership requires top management commitment, security policy establishment, and defining roles and responsibilities. Clause 6. Planning addresses risk assessment and treatment, security objectives, and planning for changes. Clause 7. Support covers resources, competence, awareness, communication, and documented information requirements. Clause 8. Operation requires implementing risk treatment plans and controlling processes. Clause 9. Performance evaluation requires monitoring, measurement, internal audit, and management review. Clause 10. Improvement requires addressing nonconformities and pursuing continual improvement. Annex A Controls. Annex A contains reference security controls organized into 4 themes in the 2022 version. Organizational controls, 37 controls, address policies, roles, asset management, access control, supplier relationships, and compliance. People controls, 8 controls, address screening, employment terms, awareness, training, and disciplinary processes. Physical controls, 14 controls address physical perimeters, entry controls, equipment security, and secure disposal. Technological controls, 34 controls address access rights, authentication, cryptography, malware protection, backup, logging, network security, and development security. Organizations must determine which controls are applicable based on risk assessment. The statement of applicability documents which controls are implemented and justifies any exclusions. ISO 27001:2022 updates. The 2022 revision introduced several changes. Control restructuring. Controls reorganized from 14 domains to 4 themes with new numbering. New controls. 11 new controls address current threats and practices including threat intelligence, cloud services security, ICT readiness for business continuity, physical security monitoring, configuration management, information deletion, data masking, data leakage prevention, monitoring activities, web filtering, and secure coding. Attribute tables. Controls are tagged with attributes, control type, security properties, cybersecurity concepts, operational capabilities, security domains, enabling flexible mapping to organizational needs. Organizations certified to ISO 27001:2013 must transition to 2022 by October 2025. Implementation approach. Implementing ISO 27001 typically involves gap analysis. Compare current state against standard requirements. Identify what exists and what needs development. Scope definition. Determine which parts of the organization are covered. Consider business units, locations, and systems. Risk assessment. Conduct risk assessment following a defined methodology. ISO 27005 provides guidance. Risk treatment. Select and implement controls to address identified risks. Documentation. Develop required policies, procedures, and records. ISO 27001 requires documented information but does not prescribe formats. Training. Ensure personnel understand their security responsibilities and the ISMS requirements. Internal audit. Assess ISMS effectiveness through internal audits before seeking certification. Management review. Senior management reviews ISMS performance and makes decisions on improvements. Certification audit. External auditors assess conformity with the standard over 2 stages. Part 3. NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. CSF Evolution. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework was originally developed in 2014 following an executive order to improve critical infrastructure cybersecurity. It quickly became the most widely adopted security framework in the United States and gained international recognition. CSF 2.0, released in February 2024, represents a significant update. It expands applicability from critical infrastructure to all organizations, adds a new govern function, and integrates lessons learned from a decade of implementation. The 6 functions. CSF 2.0 organizes security activities into 6 core functions. Govern, new in 2.0, establishes and monitors organizational cybersecurity strategy, expectations, and policy. It addresses organizational context, risk management strategy, roles and responsibilities, policy, oversight, and supply chain risk management. Identify develops organizational understanding of cybersecurity risk. Categories include asset management, risk assessment, and improvement. Protect develops and implements safeguards for critical services. Categories include identity management, awareness training, data security, platform security, and technology infrastructure resilience. Detect develops and implements detection capabilities. Categories include continuous monitoring and adverse event analysis. Respond develops and implements response activities. Categories include incident management, incident analysis, incident response reporting, and incident mitigation. Recover develops and implements recovery activities. Categories include incident recovery plan execution and incident recovery communication. Implementation tiers. CSF defines 4 implementation tiers describing the rigor of cybersecurity risk governance and management. Tier 1, partial risk management, is ad hoc with limited awareness. Cybersecurity activities may not be informed by organizational risk. Tier 2. Risk-informed risk management practices exist, but may not be organizational policy. Awareness of cybersecurity risk exists, but organization-wide approach is limited. Tier 3. Repeatable risk management practices are formally approved and expressed as policy. Practices are regularly updated based on changes. Tier 4. Adaptive organization adapts practices based on lessons learned and indicators. Continuous improvement incorporating advanced technologies and practices. Tiers are not maturity levels. Higher tiers are not inherently better. Organizations should implement tiers appropriate to their risk environment. Profiles. CSF profiles describe an organization's current or target cybersecurity posture. A profile aligns functions, categories, and subcategories with business requirements, risk tolerance, and resources. Current profile describes existing cybersecurity outcomes. Target profile describes desired outcomes. Gap analysis compares current and target profiles to identify improvement priorities. Community profiles provide sector-specific implementations. Examples exist for manufacturing, maritime, elections, and other domains. CSF 2.0 Key Changes. CSF 2.0 introduced several important changes. Govern function elevates governance to equal status with technical functions. This reflects the importance of organizational leadership in cybersecurity. Expanded scope explicitly addresses all organizations, not just critical infrastructure. Supply chain focus strengthens supply chain risk management throughout the framework. Improved resources include quick start guides, implementation examples, and informative references linking to other frameworks and standards. Implementation tiers revised to better support organizational decision-making. Using CSF with other frameworks. CSF is designed to work with other standards and frameworks. Organizations can use CSF as an organizing structure while implementing specific requirements from ISO 27001 for comprehensive management system requirements, CIS controls for prioritized technical controls, NIST 800-53 for detailed federal security controls, industry standards like PCI DSS, HIPAA, or sector-specific requirements. CSF's informative references provide detailed mappings to these frameworks. Part 4. CIS Controls. CIS Controls Overview. The Center for Internet Security, CIS, controls are a prioritized set of actions for cyber defense. Developed through a community consensus process involving industry and government experts, they represent essential security hygiene. CIS Controls Version 8, released in 2021, contains 18 controls organized by implementation priority. The controls are designed to be actionable, focusing on what matters most based on real-world attack data. Implementation groups. CIS recognizes that organizations have different resources and risk profiles. Implementation groups, IGs, help organizations prioritize based on their characteristics. IG1 is essential cyber hygiene for all organizations, regardless of size. It contains 56 safeguards addressing basic security practices. Organizations with limited resources should start here. IG2 builds on IG1 for organizations with moderate resources and somewhat greater risk. It adds 74 additional safeguards. Organizations handling sensitive data or with regulatory requirements typically need IG2. IG3 is the full set of controls for organizations with significant security resources facing sophisticated threats. It adds 23 additional safeguards. The 18 controls. Let me summarize the 18 CIS controls. Control 1. Inventory and control of enterprise assets. Know what hardware exists on your network. Control 2. Inventory and control of software assets. Know what software is authorized and running. Control 3. Data protection. Manage data throughout its life cycle with appropriate classification and protection. Control 4. Secure configuration of enterprise assets and software. Establish and maintain secure configurations. Control 5. Account management. Manage credentials and accounts for authorized users. Control 6. Access control management. Control access based on need to know and least privilege. Control 7. Continuous vulnerability management. Identify and address vulnerabilities continuously. Control 8. Audit log management. Collect, retain, and analyze logs for detection and investigation. Control 9. Email and web browser protections. Protect against email and web-based threats. Control 10. Malware defenses. Prevent, detect, and respond to malware. Control 11. Data recovery. Maintain data backup and recovery capabilities. Control 12. Network infrastructure management. Secure network devices and architecture. Control 13. Network monitoring and defense. Monitor and defend network operations. Control 14. Security awareness and skills training. Train personnel in security practices. Control 15. Service provider management. Manage security risks from service providers. Control 16. Application software security. Secure in-house developed and acquired software. Control 17. Incident response management. Establish incident response capabilities. Control 18. Penetration testing. Test defenses through simulated attacks. CIS Benchmarks. Complementing the controls, CIS benchmarks provide detailed secure configuration guidance for specific technologies. Benchmarks exist for operating systems, cloud providers, applications, network devices, and more. Benchmarks define two profile levels. Level 1 for basic security that should not significantly impact functionality, and Level 2 for environments requiring higher security with potential operational impact. CIS CAT is an assessment tool that automatically checks systems against benchmark recommendations. Part 5. Security Governance and Audit. Security Governance. Security governance is the system of leadership, organizational structures, and processes ensuring security supports organizational objectives and manages risk appropriately. Effective governance requires board and executive involvement. Security is a business risk, not just an IT issue. Boards should oversee security strategy and risk. Executives should make risk decisions and provide resources. Clear roles and responsibilities. Who is accountable for security decisions? Who implements controls? Who monitors effectiveness? RACI matrices: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, clarify roles. Policy framework. As discussed earlier, documented policies establish requirements and expectations. Risk management integration. Security decisions should be informed by risk assessment. Governance ensures risk processes are followed. Performance measurement. Metrics and indicators track security effectiveness. Dashboards communicate status to leadership. Continuous improvement. Governance includes mechanisms for learning from incidents, audits, and changing threats. The 3 lines model. The 3 lines model, formerly 3 lines of defense, describes governance structure. First line, operational management owns and manages risks. Business units and IT operations implement controls and manage day-to-day security. Second line, risk management and compliance functions provide oversight, set standards, and monitor the first line. Information security management and compliance teams typically operate here. Third line, internal audit provides independent assurance. Auditors assess whether controls are designed and operating effectively. External auditors and regulators provide additional oversight outside the organization. Security audit. Security audits assess whether controls are designed appropriately and operating effectively. Internal audits are conducted by the organization's own audit function. They provide ongoing assurance and identify improvements. Internal audit should be independent of IT and security management. External audits are conducted by independent auditors. They may be required for regulatory compliance, certification, ISO 27001, or customer assurance, SOC 2. Types of audits include compliance audits assess conformity with specific requirements, regulations, standards, or policies. Control audits assess whether controls are designed to address risks and operating as intended. IT audits focus on technology controls and processes. Operational audits examine efficiency and effectiveness of security operations. SOC Reports. Service Organization Control, SOC, reports are audit reports for service organizations. SOC 1 addresses controls relevant to financial reporting, used primarily for services affecting customer financial statements. SOC 2 addresses security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy, widely used to demonstrate security to customers. Type 1 reports assess control design at a point in time. Type 2 reports assess control design and operating effectiveness over a period, typically 6 to 12 months. SOC 2 Type 2 reports are particularly valuable for assessing third-party security. They provide independent verification of control effectiveness over time. Audit Preparation. Preparing for audits reduces stress and improves outcomes. Maintain documentation. Auditors require evidence. Keep policies, procedures, and records current and accessible. Track control operation. Retain evidence that controls operate consistently, logs, reports, and approvals. Conduct self-assessments. Identify and address issues before auditors find them. Understand scope. Know what auditors will examine and ensure relevant controls are ready. Assign owners. Designate someone to coordinate with auditors and gather evidence. Address previous findings. Auditors always follow up on prior findings. Ensure remediation is complete. Part 6. Incident Response Planning. Why planning matters. Security incidents will occur despite best prevention efforts. How organizations respond determines impact severity. Poor response extends outages, increases costs, and damages reputation. Effective response limits damage and accelerates recovery. Incident response cannot be improvised during a crisis. Pressure, incomplete information, and time constraints make good decisions difficult. Planning enables deliberate preparation when stakes are lower. Regulatory requirements increasingly mandate incident response capabilities. GDPR, NIST2, DORA, PCI DSS, and many industry regulations require documented incident response procedures. Incident response phases. NIST SP 800-61 defines 4 incident response phases. Preparation occurs before incidents. It includes developing policies and procedures, establishing the response team, acquiring tools and resources, and training personnel. Detection and analysis identifies that incidents have occurred and determines their nature and scope. This phase includes monitoring, alert triage, and initial investigation. Containment, eradication, and recovery stops incident spread, removes attacker presence, and restores normal operations. This phase includes isolation, evidence preservation, cleanup, and system restoration. Post-incident activity extracts lessons from incidents to improve future response. It includes root cause analysis, documentation, and improvement implementation. Incident Response Plan Contents. An incident response plan should address purpose and scope. What incidents are covered? What triggers the plan? Roles and responsibilities. Who does what during incidents? Include IT, security, legal, communications, and management roles. Communication procedures. How does the team coordinate? Who communicates externally? To customers, regulators, media? Classification criteria. How are incidents categorized and prioritized? Response procedures. What steps are taken for different incident types? Escalation criteria. When is senior management notified? When are external parties engaged? Evidence handling. How is evidence preserved for potential legal proceedings? External resources. What vendors, law enforcement, or other parties might be engaged? Incident Response Team. The Computer Security Incident Response Team, CSGRT, or Incident Response Team, IRT, coordinates response activities. Core team members typically include security analysts, IT operations personnel, and an incident manager. They handle most incidents directly. Extended team members are engaged as needed. Legal counsel for regulatory and liability issues, communications for external messaging, human resources for insider incidents, executives for strategic decisions. External resources may include forensic specialists, legal specialists, crisis communications firms, and law enforcement. Identify and establish relationships before incidents occur. Testing and exercises. Plans must be tested to verify they work and to train personnel. Tabletop exercises walk through scenarios in a meeting room. The team discusses how they would respond. This is low cost and effective for identifying gaps. Functional exercises actually execute response procedures without a real incident. Teams might practice forensic procedures, communication protocols, or recovery processes. Full-scale exercises simulate realistic incidents as completely as possible. These are expensive but reveal weaknesses that other tests miss. Test at least annually. Test whenever significant changes occur to systems, team, or procedures. Part 7. EU Regulations, NIS2, DORA, AI Act, Cyber Resilience Act. The EU regulatory landscape. The European Union has enacted an ambitious cybersecurity regulatory program. Multiple regulations and directives establish requirements for organizations operating in Europe. Understanding these requirements is essential for any organization with EU presence or customers. NIS2 Directive. The Network and Information Security Directive 2, NIS2, entered into force in January 2023, with member state transposition required by October 2024. It significantly expands the original NIS directive from 2016. Scope expansion. NIS2 covers many more sectors including energy, transport, banking, health, digital infrastructure, public administration, space, postal services, waste management, manufacturing, food, and digital providers. Organizations are classified as essential or important based on size and sector. Requirements include risk management measures. Organizations must implement appropriate technical, operational, and organizational measures addressing risk analysis, incident handling, business continuity, supply chain security, network security, access control, cryptography, and security training. Incident reporting. Significant incidents must be reported to authorities within 24 hours, early warning, 72 hours, initial notification, and 1 month, final report. Supply chain security. Organizations must address cybersecurity risks from suppliers and service providers. Corporate accountability. Management bodies must approve and oversee cybersecurity measures. They must receive training and can be held liable for noncompliance. Enforcement. Penalties for essential entities can reach 10 million euros or 2% of global turnover. For important entities, 7 million euros or 1.4% of turnover. Digital Operational Resilience Act, DORA. DORA establishes uniform requirements for financial sector digital operational resilience. It applies from January 2025 to banks, insurance companies, investment firms, payment providers, and other financial entities. Key requirements include ICT risk management. Financial entities must maintain comprehensive ICT risk management frameworks addressing identification, protection, detection, response, recovery, and learning. ICT-related incident management. Entities must classify and report major ICT-related incidents using standardized criteria. Digital operational resilience testing. Regular testing, including threat-led penetration testing for significant entities. ICT third-party risk management. Requirements for managing risks from ICT service providers, including contractual provisions, oversight, and exit strategies. Critical ICT third-party oversight. Regulators can directly oversee critical third-party providers, such as major cloud providers, serving the financial sector. Information sharing. Encourages sharing of cyber threat intelligence among financial entities. DORA harmonizes what was previously addressed by fragmented national rules and sector-specific guidance. AI Act. The EU AI Act, which entered into force in August 2024 with phased implementation through 2027, establishes a risk-based framework for artificial intelligence systems. Risk categories. Unacceptable risk AI is prohibited. This includes social scoring systems, real-time biometric identification in public spaces, with exceptions, and manipulative AI. High-risk AI faces extensive requirements including risk management, data governance, technical documentation, transparency, human oversight, accuracy, robustness, and conformity assessment. Categories include AI in critical infrastructure, education, employment, essential services, law enforcement, and biometric systems. Limited risk AI requires transparency obligations. Users must know they are interacting with AI. Minimal risk AI faces no specific requirements beyond existing law. Security implications. High-risk AI systems must be secure against unauthorized modification. AI used in cybersecurity tools may fall under various risk categories. Organizations using AI must understand where their systems fall in the risk framework. AI-powered cyberattacks raise new threat considerations. Cyber Resilience Act. The Cyber Resilience Act, CRA, adopted in 2024 with requirements phasing in through 2027, establishes cybersecurity requirements for products with digital elements, hardware, and software products. Key requirements. Security by design. Products must be designed and developed with appropriate cybersecurity throughout the life cycle. Vulnerability handling. Manufacturers must identify and address vulnerabilities, providing security updates for at least 5 years. Security documentation. Products must include clear cybersecurity information for users. Incident reporting. Actively exploited vulnerabilities and severe incidents must be reported to NIST within 24 hours. Conformity assessment. Products must undergo conformity assessment before market placement. Critical products face third-party assessment. Scope includes software, including SAS components, hardware devices, IoT, network equipment, and products imported into the EU. Implications for organizations. Software vendors must implement secure development practices and maintain products throughout their life cycle. Organizations procuring products must consider CRA compliance in vendor selection. Open-source software has specific provisions, generally exempting non-commercial development. Part 8. GDPR, PCI DSS, and HIPAA. General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. GDPR, in effect since May 2018, regulates personal data processing. While primarily a privacy regulation, it has significant security implications. Security requirements. Article 32. Implement appropriate technical and organizational measures. Consider state-of-the-art implementation costs, nature and scope of processing, and risks. Measures may include pseudonymization, encryption, confidentiality, integrity, and availability assurance, restoration capability, and testing. Breach notification, Article 33 to 34. Notify supervisory authority within 72 hours of becoming aware of a breach likely to result in risk. Notify affected individuals without undue delay if high risk. Accountability, Article 5, 2. Controllers must demonstrate compliance. Documentation of processing activities, security measures, and data protection impact assessments required. Enforcement. Maximum fines of €20 million or 4% of global turnover. Supervisory authorities increasingly active, with substantial fines issued in 2024 to 2025. Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS. PCI DSS is required for organizations processing, storing, or transmitting payment card data. Version 4.0, released in 2022, became mandatory in March 2024, with some requirements having extended compliance dates into 2025. PCI DSS 4.0 contains 12 requirements across 6 goals. Build and maintain a secure network and systems. Requirements 1 to 2 firewalls, secure configurations. Protect account data. Requirements 3 to 4 protect stored data, encrypt transmission. Maintain a vulnerability management program. Requirements 5 to 6 malware protection, secure development. Implement strong access control measures. Requirements 7 to 9 restrict access, authenticate users, restrict physical access. Regularly monitor and test networks. Requirements 10 to 11 logging, security testing. Maintain an information security policy. Requirement 12 security policies, procedures, awareness. Version 4.0 changes include customized approach allowing alternative controls achieving security objectives. Enhanced authentication requirements, including multi-factor authentication. Stronger encryption requirements. Increased focus on continuous security. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. HIPAA protects health information in the United States. The security rule establishes requirements for electronic protected health information, EPHI. Administrative safeguards, security management, workforce security, information access management, training, and incident procedures. Physical safeguards, facility access, workstation security, and device controls. Technical safeguards, access control, audit controls, integrity controls, and transmission security. HIPAA requires risk analysis and implementation of reasonable and appropriate safeguards. The 2024 to 2025 enforcement environment shows increased penalties for insufficient risk analysis and access controls. Proposed updates in 2024 would strengthen HIPAA security rule requirements, including mandatory encryption and enhanced access controls. Part 9. Building a Compliance Program. Compliance Program Components. An effective compliance program includes inventory of requirements. Know what regulations, standards, and contracts apply. Map requirements to organizational units and systems. Gap assessment. Compare current state against requirements. Identify deficiencies. Remediation planning. Prioritize gaps and develop plans to address them. Allocate resources. Control implementation. Implement controls addressing requirements. Document implementation. Monitoring. Track compliance continuously, not just at audit time. Automate where possible. Evidence management. Maintain evidence demonstrating compliance. Organize for efficient retrieval. Reporting. Report compliance status to management and relevant stakeholders. Continuous improvement. Learn from audits, incidents, and regulatory changes. Managing multiple frameworks. Most organizations face multiple compliance requirements simultaneously. Managing them efficiently requires control mapping. Map controls across frameworks. A single control often addresses multiple requirements. The NIST informative references provide cross-framework mappings. Unified Control Framework. Implement a comprehensive control set that addresses all requirements rather than separate controls for each framework. Integrated assessments. Where possible, conduct assessments that address multiple frameworks simultaneously. GRC tools. Governance, risk, and compliance platforms help manage multiple requirements, track control implementation, and maintain evidence. Compliance versus security. Compliance and security are related but distinct. Compliance addresses minimum requirements. Meeting compliance standards does not guarantee security. Requirements may be outdated or insufficient for your threat environment. Security addresses actual risk. Effective security goes beyond compliance to address specific organizational risks. Compliance-driven security is common but problematic. Organizations that do only what compliance requires often have security gaps. Security-driven compliance is better. Build security based on risk assessment, then demonstrate how controls meet compliance requirements. Compliance failures often indicate security failures, but compliance successes do not prove security success. Part 10. Current Trends and Future Directions. Regulatory Convergence and Divergence. The regulatory landscape shows both convergence and divergence. Convergence. Common concepts appear across regulations, risk-based approach, incident reporting, supply chain security, accountability. Frameworks increasingly reference each other. Divergence. Jurisdictional differences persist. EU regulations emphasize privacy and fundamental rights. US regulations vary by sector. National implementations of EU directives differ. Global organizations must navigate this complexity, potentially implementing different approaches for different jurisdictions. Automation and continuous compliance. Manual compliance processes cannot scale. Trends toward automation include policy as code. Security policies expressed in machine-readable formats enabling automated enforcement. Continuous monitoring. Tools that continuously assess compliance rather than point-in-time audits. Automated evidence collection. Systems that automatically capture and organize compliance evidence. Compliance as code. Infrastructure configurations that enforce compliance requirements. Regulatory technology, RegTech, investments are growing as organizations seek efficiency. Board-level cybersecurity. Regulatory requirements and business reality are elevating cybersecurity to board level. SEC rules require public companies to disclose material cybersecurity incidents and describe board oversight. DORA requires financial sector management bodies to approve and oversee ICT risk management. NIS2 establishes management body accountability and training requirements. Boards increasingly need cybersecurity expertise. Many organizations are adding directors with security backgrounds. Security leaders must communicate effectively with boards, in business terms, focusing on risk and strategy rather than technical details. Preparing for the future. Organizations should prepare for continuing regulatory evolution. Monitor regulatory developments in relevant jurisdictions. Build adaptable compliance programs rather than point solutions for current requirements. Engage in regulatory consultation processes to influence requirements. Participate in industry associations for collective voice and shared learning. Invest in security fundamentals that serve any regulatory framework. Conclusion. Let me summarize what we covered in this lecture on security policies and compliance. We began with the security policy hierarchy. Policies establish requirements, standards specify details, procedures provide instructions, and guidelines offer recommendations. Core policies include information security, acceptable use, access control, data classification, incident response, and business continuity. ISO 27001 provides an international standard for information security management systems. The 2022 version restructured controls into 4 themes and added new controls addressing current practices. Certification demonstrates comprehensive security management. NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 organizes security into 6 functions: govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Implementation tiers and profiles help organizations apply the framework appropriately. CIS controls provide prioritized technical controls. Implementation groups help organizations focus on appropriate controls based on resources and risk. Security governance ensures security supports organizational objectives through leadership involvement, clear roles, policy frameworks, and performance measurement. Audits provide assurance through internal and external assessments. Incident response planning prepares organizations to detect, contain, eradicate, and recover from security incidents. Plans must be tested through tabletop exercises, functional exercises, and full-scale simulations. EU regulations have transformed the compliance landscape. NIS2 expands security requirements across sectors. DORA addresses financial sector digital resilience. The AI Act regulates artificial intelligence systems. The Cyber Resilience Act establishes requirements for products with digital elements. GDPR, PCI DSS, and HIPAA continue as major compliance drivers requiring security measures, breach notification, and accountability. Effective compliance programs integrate multiple requirements through control mapping and unified frameworks. Compliance is necessary but not sufficient for security. Risk-based security programs should drive compliance, not the reverse. This concludes our lecture series on information security. I hope these lectures have provided you with a solid foundation in security principles, practices, and regulations. Security is a continuous journey. Keep learning, stay current with evolving threats and regulations, and apply these principles in your careers. Discussion questions. How can organizations avoid treating compliance as a checkbox exercise rather than a genuine security improvement? What challenges do organizations face when navigating multiple overlapping regulatory frameworks across jurisdictions? How will the increasing number of cybersecurity regulations worldwide affect innovation and business agility? Thank you for your attention throughout this course. Are there any final questions? Review questions. Describe the security policy hierarchy, policies, standards, procedures, guidelines, and explain the purpose of each level. What is an ISMS according to ISO 27001? And what are the key steps for implementation? Explain the 6 functions of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 and what changed from version 1.1. What are CS implementation groups, and how do they help organizations prioritize controls? Describe the 4 phases of incident response and explain why planning and testing are essential. Compare NIS2 and DORA. How do they differ in scope and requirements? What are the key security requirements of GDPR Article 32, and what are the breach notification timeframes? Explain the difference between compliance-driven security and security-driven compliance. Which approach is more effective? Key terms: ACME, Automatic Certificate Management Environment Protocol; AI Act, EU Artificial Intelligence Act, comprehensive regulation governing AI systems including those used in security; CIS Controls, a prioritized set of security best practices from the Center for Internet Security; CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, the executive responsible for an organization's information security program; COBIT, Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies, an IT governance framework; Cyber Resilience Act, EU regulation establishing cybersecurity requirements for products with digital elements; DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act, EU regulation for financial sector cybersecurity; DPO, Data Protection Officer, a role required by GDPR to oversee data protection compliance; GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, the EU regulation governing personal data protection; GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance, an integrated approach to managing these functions; HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, U.S. Health Data Protection Law; Incident Response, the structured process for preparing for, detecting, containing, and recovering from security incidents; ISMS, Information Security Management System, as defined by ISO 27001. ISO 27001, the International Standard for Information Security Management Systems; NIS2, Network and Information Security Directive 2, EU Directive expanding cybersecurity requirements; NIST CIS, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, a voluntary framework for managing cybersecurity risk; PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, for organizations handling card data; SOC, Security Operations Center, a centralized facility for monitoring, detecting, and responding to security events; SOC Report, Service Organization Control Report, providing assurance about service provider controls; SLEX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, U.S. legislation requiring financial reporting controls and IT system auditing; 3 Lines Model, a governance model separating management, oversight, and assurance functions. References and further reading: ISO and IEC 27001:2022, Information Security Management Systems; ISO and IEC 27002:2022, Information Security Controls; NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, February 2024; CIS Controls Version 8, 2021; NIST SP 800-61 Rev 2, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide; NIS2 Directive, EU number 2022-2555; Digital Operational Resilience Act, DORA, EU Regulation number 2022-2554; EU AI Act, EU Regulation number 2024-1689; Cyber Resilience Act, EU Regulation number 2024-2847; General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, EU Regulation number 2016-679; PCI DSS version 4.0; HIPAA Security Rule, 45 CFR Part 160 and 164; SEC Cybersecurity Disclosure Rules, 2023; NISA Guidelines and Reports; ISACA COBIT Framework,